Hello everyone, welcome to the spoiler talk for Luke Cage Season 1. Very excited to get into this because also what I thought about this show before this rewatch happened was actually not entirely true. So that's interesting, and that is in the form of Diamondback, but we'll get there when we get there. But I'm very excited to do the spoiler talk, so let's get into it. So, the first episode starts off with Luke Cage working at a barber shop. We get a reference to Jessica Jones because of the shotgun incident, and also Luke Cage is still thinking about Reva. So, Luke Cage has two jobs. One is in the barbershop, but then afterwards he has to immediately head over to the second job. And on the way, we get a Tony Stark name drop. And this second job is at Cottonmouth's club, where he washes dishes. However, because of the fact that a fellow named Dante has called in sick, Luke Cage now gets to tend the bar where we meet Misty Knight, a cop, which we also learn in this episode, so it's not really like a big shock. But she's a cop, and they kind of hit it off, and then they don't, and then they do, and then they do each other, and then it's like an I'll call you thing. That's basically how their storyline goes. However, Misty Knight keeps looking up at Cottonmouth's place, and Luke gets a little bit suspicious, but also he doesn't necessarily care too much. He's like, I thought you were one of his, but you're also too old to be one of his. And it's like, that's not what you say to women. Come on, Dad. You can't call them old. Don't you know the rules? But at Cottonmouth, we learned that his cousin, sister, I forgot what Mariah was, but she is a councilwoman, so that's great. And Cottonmouth sells hammer weapons, which is another reference to Iron Man. It's all connected, boys. But as he is kind of like talking along, we also have a gun deal that goes wrong because of the fact that Dante and two friends, one of them is named Shamik, I think the other one's named Chico. So those three, they want to steal the money, but then Dante gets a bit, panicky about it. So Shamik shoots Dante dead because of the fact that he's gonna snitch. And then they take the money, 1.2 mil, and they leave. Meanwhile, after the fun with Misty, during the night, Luke Cage has some prison nightmares. And at Cottonmouth Place, we have Shades, who is back in town, and he now works for Diamondback. And this is the thing that I was wrong about, because I thought that this season would be just like Daredevil Season 2, where it would be like we have Punisher, and then once we're done with Punisher, we can go into Elektra. But it's like, it's not natural. Here, Diamondback is kind of like Kingpin from Daredevil Season 1, where he basically runs the whole show from behind the scenes until later on, where he becomes in the forefront of the show. I thought it was Cottonmouth first, then Diamondback, not knowing that Diamondback was already set up since episode 1. I will say this though, Cottonmouth is way better than Diamondback. But Diamondback isn't happy, and there's also potentially a sort of a takeover potentially gonna happen. At least that's what Cottonmouth thinks. And I will say this though, the actor for Cottonmouth is fantastic, Mahershala Ali, and it is a sad day. They still haven't been able to give him the Blade movie. And if anyone is gonna mention the fact that these two characters were played by the same actor, we're just gonna use the racist card, okay? Don't you worry about that one. However, we do have a stupid thing that happens in this episode, because Shamik is an idiot, because he steals 1.2, I think it was 1.2 million from Cottonmouth. And what does he do with it? Well, Chico apparently goes into hiding, which is entirely understandable. And what you should probably do. Or go on the run. However, Shamik goes to the strip club. And initially, when I first saw this, I was like, this is stupid, because this can't happen in the real world. But if you look at how the world is nowadays, yeah, I believe it. I believe stupid like that walks among us. I am entirely convinced. But then he gets taken to Cottonmouth and he gets killed because he's a tough guy. Also, we learned that Luke Cage knows Shades, so that is something that will come into play later on. And he met him in prison. We didn't get the Luke Cage backstory in Jessica Jones because he has a whole show about it. And when Luke Cage sees Shades, he thinks about running, but then has a flashback to Reva and decides to stay. Meanwhile, we have a Chinese couple who gets attacked, and Luke Cage actually needs to pay them in order to live there. But they are being roughed up by some people who are working for Mariah and also for Cottonmouth. And they want money. But the man is like, no. He stands his ground. And then Luke Cage enters and is like, hey, stop. Don't be like that. And then they're like, look at him. He thinks he's all tough and stuff. Look, hey, you, show him your special move. So he gets up, the one guy, and he punches Luke Cage and breaks his hand and the bone comes out. And then Luke Cage goes to town on these guys and takes them out, throws one through the window, grabs someone's gun as they pull the trigger, gets shot in his hand. He's like, ow! And it smashes him through a table. And then the last guy, who is basically the biggest guy there, he's like, I don't even like these guys, okay? Bye! And he runs away. So we do get some Luke Cage indestructible action in this episode. We had to wait the whole episode to get there, but also we had to do some setup. So let's just get straight into episode 2. Pop, no! Why? So, episode 2. Let's go back before Pop died, okay? When he was still alive. Well, actually, we start this episode after he dies, but then we go back. So we start off in this episode with Luke just basically looking at Mariah's building and gets a gun pulled on him, talks about one of the black heroes, I guess. I don't know. And then we go back to before all this happened, where Misty replays the crime scene of what happened at the gun deal gone wrong in her head. She basically just plays it all out. And then the dude is like, hey, pictures don't talk. And she's like, if you stop your yapping, they speak. So Luke starts asking Pop about Mariah and Cottonmouth, and I can officially confirm they are cousins. I did miss that in the first episode because I thought that they were brother and sister. And also Turk's here as well, which is like, oh my god, he's just in the corner playing chess. Like, what? I did not expect to see him, especially not in such a minor way. He becomes a little bit more important later on because he has to be a horrible person no matter how you look at it. So, Pop asks Luke to find Chico, and Luke is like, yeah, I'm not doing that anymore. And then he's like, look, man, I didn't ask questions about nothing, about everything that happened here. But, you know what you told me about keeping your secret? That you'd owe me one. I'm collecting. Find him. So, Luke goes out to find him. Meanwhile, Misty is going to the park to play some basketball for info. I don't know if she really gets info, but because we don't see that, sadly enough. And also, Mariah is kind of sick of this, and she wants this to be over. So Luke finds Chico, and he's like, look, man, I found you in about 3 hours for free. Imagine what someone like Cottonmouth can do who has a lot of money. Come with me to Pop's. And he's like, no, I have $500,000. Go away. So he leaves, goes back to Pop, and is like, sorry, I tried. And then Pop goes back in time and he talks about how he used to be the big man around town, punching people and all that stuff, until he got together with Cottonmouth. So they have history. I like how we get that in this episode. But he used to be tough, but then, you know, things went wrong, and then he decided not to be tough anymore and instead just open a barbershop in order to basically, you know, someone does something bad, they go to prison, and look, Punisher may not agree, but some people do reform, like Pop, for example. He came out and he was like, no, staying clean. And he opened up a shop, which basically is kind of like, the way that I would describe Pop's shop is like that hotel in John Wick, where it's like no violence in there. You have respect, no street talk, no nothing. Inside of the barbershop, you don't do that stuff. Outside, who cares? But inside, no. That's the rule. So Misty visits Pop for information about Chico, and also Luke learns who Misty really was. So that's great. Luke has a little bit more of a, is a bit more spiteful towards her because she was kind of lying to him. But they don't give up Chico, who came in earlier. But Chico came in earlier, and Pop was like, you were stupid. Come here, my boy. And then the cops come in. He's like, hide. So basically, they kind of tell the cops nothing, get them gone. And then Pop asks Luke to go to Cottonmouth about Chico in order to kind of keep things secret. Also, Turk saw Chico at the barbershop earlier because he was asking for the restroom key. However, let's be honest here, it's Turk. He wasn't asking about that. He was literally curious about what happened. But Luke goes over to Cottonmouth. Cottonmouth is like, alright, fine. Because of the fact that he has respect for Pop, he's like, alright, fine. I'll come by tomorrow, same time as yesterday. Tell him that. Also, you're fired. And Luke's like, no, I'm not. I quit before I even walked in here. So Luke goes back. Meanwhile, the henchman, whose name I don't know, but also doesn't really matter because I hate him with everything I am. He goes with Shades over to the barbershop, but first gets confirmation from Turk if Chico is really at the barbershop. So they head right over there, and then Shades like, we wait until he comes out. Yeah, the henchman does not do that. He walks down the stairs and he starts shooting everything and everyone in sight. He just starts unloading clips after clip after, well, an entire clip. But he starts unloading, just shooting into the shop. Luke Cage sees the flash and then grabs the kid in the chair and just shields him. Because Luke is only one man, he cannot protect them all. However, Afterwards, Luke is like, play that. And then they go inside, they grab the money and leave and go back to Stokes. And Pop dies. R.I.P. the boy. Ah, man. Pop, why? Pop was the best of us. I don't like this henchman. I don't like him. I don't even know his name, and I don't care about his name. So Luke is basically in a bit of a paralysis about the whole thing that has happened, and he's kind of thinking about what to do next. Meanwhile, they return to Cottonmouth, and it's like, here's the money. It's like, alright, go. Everything went great. Alright, it's like, no, actually, this idiot, he decided to shoot up the shop. It's like, God, why did you have to do that? Don't worry about it. Alright, we got the money. Everything is fine. I'll give him a big donation. I'll help him rebuild. Everything will be fine, okay? Yeah, Pops is dead. What? And then he's like, Pops is dead. At this point, also, Turk walks in. And he's like, yo, where's my money? And then Cottonmouth is like, how did you get up here? And Turk is just like, there ain't no door closed for Turk Barrett. Come on. But when Cottonmouth learns that Pop is dead, he grabs the henchman and throws him off the roof. And tells Turk, like, you had to deal with him. Grab the money from his corpse. I don't care. So, to end this episode, we basically have Luke Cage and Cottonmouth, which I actually like this, both mourning the loss of Pop. And also, afterwards, Luke goes over to the building from Mariah and then gets the gun pulled to his head, at which point he shoots himself and the kid runs away, and that's it. That's the end of the episode. Also, I forgot to talk about that in the last episode, but in the last one and in this episode, Pop called Luke Cage Power Man, which is his original name in the comic books, and I like that he called him that. A rocket! Really? Alright, let's talk about episode 3. So we start in the future and then go backwards again, just like the last episode for some reason. And Luke goes on a rampage in a building. You see a couch fly out, and then he walks off with a duffel bag. Meanwhile, earlier that day, everyone, the whole city basically, or at least the whole of Harlem, basically seems to be mourning Pop, R.I.P. the boy. And Luke Cage is looking at the funeral details, but he can't really afford that kind of stuff. And then Cottonmouth comes in and he's like, I'll pay for everything, don't worry about it. And he basically is like, look, it wasn't my fault, okay? I didn't tell him to shoot up the shop. He went rogue. I killed him for it. Everything's fine. Don't you worry about that. And Luke is like, everything is most certainly not fine. And basically, Luke goes to war against Cottonmouth this episode, but he is gonna do it in a way, like in a sense, through Mariah, kind of. And at the hospital, Chico gives no information to the cops. But Luke Cage later on comes to him and first has a little chat with Misty Knight. And tells Chico, like, look, Cottonmouth ain't coming after you. Alright? He has the money. Everything is fine. It was his man who went rogue. That was it. However, do you know any information about how Cottonmouth's operation works? So Chico's like, yeah. I mean, they got a big place, and then they got a bunch of small places. So Luke comes to the idea of, like, let's attack the small place so that they put every money into the big place, and then we can hit it hard. Also, Chico pushes the blame that he has towards other people, because it's like, Chico, you are to blame for Pop's death, okay? You stole from Cottonmouth, which led to all of this. It's like, no. I mean, who is to say that a bullet didn't bounce off of your body into Pop's? Huh? Maybe that's what happened. And also, you're one of them, aren't you? And Luke is gonna pretend to be one of Domingo's men in order to be able to attack Cottonmouth without really getting other people into trouble outside of another criminal. So everything is fine. So he goes and he hits a lot of places, like 4 places that belong to Cottonmouth. Cottonmouth loses everything, but he doesn't take the money. He basically takes everyone out, opens the safe for the money, and walks off, calls the cops each time. Everything basically gets collected by the cops. So as Luke Cage predicts, Cottonmouth starts putting all of his eggs into one basket, which is actually the place where Mariah basically works out of, which Mariah isn't really too happy about. She's not happy about how this stuff is unfolding at all. Also, we learned that Misty had a good dad, and that she had more than her finger on Luke Cage. And Domingo arrives at Cottonmouth's place, and he's like, look, we didn't do it, but yeah, I know you work for Diamondback. And he declares war in Spanish. So that's fantastic. And then later on, Luke begins his final attack. He grabs a car door, pulls it off, and goes into the building and takes out everyone. And then he takes one of the duffel bags himself, and the rest he leaves for the cops because he needs that duffel bag in order to pay for Pops' shop. And then he leaves. And Misty is looking at the photos that they took, and she realizes that the one who has been doing all of this is actually Luke Cage. And apparently Chico wants to talk, but Misty decides not to go with the other cop, whose name I don't know. So he goes alone to Chico, gives him some food. Chico's like, I'm ready to talk about Cottonmouth and all that stuff. And then he kills him. A corrupt cop, apparently. A cop that I liked because he was defending Luke Cage earlier. It was like, come on, one vigilante takes care of all that stuff and it saves us months of work. I like him. I was like, yeah, and of course he's a corrupt cop. Why wouldn't he be? But he tells Stokes, like, look, I took care of your problem, okay? And also, the man you're looking for is Luke Cage. Simple as that. But before that, Cottonmouth was very angry. He starts smashing things up, and Mariah's like, I should be smashing things up. And then it's like, sit down, Black Mariah. And it's like, you call me that? In the comics, she is known as Black Mariah. So I like how we get, like, the comic book names out anyway, like Black Mariah, Power Man. I like how they use those names, even though they would kind of be silly to use as actual, like, names. But, Cottonmouth, he has to take care of a dishwasher, aka Luke Cage. Meanwhile, Luke Cage gives the money to Bobby so that he can rebuild the shop. And afterwards, he's gonna go to eat at the Chinese place, which he also had to pay money to. He then gives the woman a lot of money, and she's like, the food wasn't that good. And he's like, look, I just want to make things right, okay? So she hugs him, and then on the opposite end of the street, Cottonmouth is there, and I thought he was gonna pull out a sniper and shoot Luke, but then he pulls out a rocket launcher and fires it at the shop. Like, what? I thought this was supposed to be taken seriously. You don't fire a rocket like that. But Luke realizes it and grabs the old woman. But still, a rocket? Are you out of your mind? What? Oh my god, you are joking me. Who's ready for some backstory about Mr. Cage? Because while he is trapped under the rubble with Connie, which I now learned is the name, we get basically flashbacks to his backstory, so we'll deal with that first before we talk about what happens in present day. So back in the day, Luke Cage was put in prison for a crime he did not commit. So if the A-Team needs a new black guy, they got someone on call. And his name is Carl Lucas, which, to be honest, a black guy named Carl, there's only one that I'm thinking of, and that is the legend himself called CJ. But this is CL. But he was framed for a crime, which we will get to later on this episode. But later in the series, alright? Not there yet. So Luke tries to keep his head down, even though everyone is like, hey, he's a cop. I don't know why everyone is just telling... everyone is like, he's a cop. But at least Luke doesn't need to be worried, because everyone he has put away has never gone to Seagate. So everything's fine. However, everything is not fine, because trying to keep his head down isn't really the way to go when this place is a bit corrupt. Because Shades and someone else beat up Carl, and the cop notices that Carl can actually fight. So he wants him for his underground cage matches, but Carl says no. And then he becomes friends with Squabbles. And also, this is where he met Riva, because the fact that she's basically the group therapist, I guess. But she is the only one who actually knows for a fact that Carl is innocent and that he didn't do it. But Squabbles gets framed for an attack, at which point now Carl has to go into the underground matches in order to save him, basically. However, he does want Squabbles with him as his trainer, so that works out. So he gets into the ring and he fights his way through. However, he is starting to lose himself, sadly enough, in the fights. And Riva is also starting to notice that there's something wrong with him, because he has basically shut off and he hasn't been to a session in months. However, the guard now notices that Riva is also someone that he cares about. So he brags about that to Carl, and Carl then goes over to her and is like, look, alright, this place is bad. There are underground cage matches and all that stuff. Tell my lawyer that I'm ready to talk. And then he leaves. However, he also told this to Squabbles, who, after getting beaten into a pulp, talked and then got killed. R.I.P. Squabbles. So Luke gets beaten up, and then Riva asked the doctor there in order to use, because there was talk of experiments, but Riva said she didn't know anything about it. However, she does. So she asked the doctor if the doctor could put Luke Cage in the machine as well, because of the fact that she loves him. So the doctor eventually agrees, puts him in the machine. However, the corrupt guard, the main one that we've been following in this episode, he finds out, and then he wants to kill Luke Cage. So he messes with the machine, and the machine was actually supposed to be a healing chamber that basically heals you twice as fast. However, because of the messing that he did with it, now it turned him indestructible and gave him super strength. So he punches his way out and now needs some clothes. So he grabs a yellow shirt and some blue pants and puts it on and looks at himself through glass, the reflection in glass. And then he's like, oh, stupid outfit. But to anyone who has some knowledge, that is his comic book outfit. Also, I don't really have an issue with them calling comic book outfits sometimes stupid. As long as you don't disrespect the character, that is all that matters. And that's why I feel like this series does it. This series respects Luke Cage, but still pokes fun at the fact that his outfit, at least the original one, looks a bit dumb. But afterwards, he shaves his head and he shaves till he has a goatee. And then he gets the name Luke Cage from the Bible because his dad was a pastor. And there was a verse that he always read from Luke. So he chooses that name, and then I guess Cage came with the whole fact of that he escaped from a cage. I don't know. And that is it. And then afterwards, we have the fact that a purple guy ruined everything for Reva and Luke Cage. Their happy ending got cut short. And then afterwards, you watch Jessica Jones season 1, and then you get to this season. And now we're caught up to present day. So under the rubble, Luke wakes up, and he basically just starts moving rubble around, which is kind of weird because he's like, look, there's a gas leak. We have to be careful, otherwise we could die. So I'm gonna move everything around, and then afterwards I'm gonna punch the rubble. That's being very careful, by the way. But he gets them out, and then now people are starting to notice Luke Cage. So that's gonna be more important in the next episode. So in episode 5, Luke digs through the rubble and finds the swear jar. However, it is later on Misty Knight who finds the picture of Reva, which, to be honest, I feel like he was searching for both, but after he finds the swear jar, he leaves. So I think the swear jar for him was a bit more important, especially because Pop just died recently. Also, Claire arrives, gets robbed, and beats the guy who robs her, and arrives at her mom's place, at which point she's like, ninjas attack the hospital. So this is after that later on part in Daredevil season 2, which is actually pretty cool. And she wants to become as a character that in the comics is known as Night Nurse, a nurse for superheroes, basically. Also, we learned that Cottonmouth has gotten nothing. He has barely any money and barely any power because everyone's just talking about him behind his back, basically mocking him. So he decides to have his boys hit the streets and make sure that whenever they do something, steal money, beat someone up, or just steal other stuff, make sure that the one who gets blamed is Luke Cage. We are doing this because Luke Cage made us do this. Meanwhile, back at the barbershop, Luke Cage gets a suit for the Pop Memorial, so that is great. But before he can go, he must first clean up the mess that was created because a woman walks in. She yells about the fact that her dad's ring was stolen, and she wants Luke Cage to get it back. And then afterwards, a bunch of other people tell him that bad stuff has happened. So he starts helping them one by one, punching people. Which, I love Luke Cage because he just slaps people away. He just slaps them away. Oh, that's funny. Also, Cottonmouth asks Shades what he can do. What would be a smart option? Shades like, sell the club. And then he's like, no, I'm not gonna sell this club because no black man has ever done this. Or black person. I don't know if he said man or person, but let's say black man. No black man has ever done this. Right? And I'm not selling it. Not the club. And after Luke has been going through a bunch of people, he decides to pay Cottonmouth a visit, at which point he takes care of the guards, and the way that he fights, that is when Shade's like, Carl? Is that you? You're supposed to be dead. But he's not. So now, Cottonmouth needs a way to deal with Luke Cage. And then Shades is like, look, Diamondback taught me that there's no bullet that can't kill. There has to be a bullet for everyone. So, he has a special bullet that is kind of like a drilling bullet. And then when he asked where it came from, it was from space. So an alien drilling bullet. And also he asked who sells it, or I think. And it's like, and I like how they mentioned first Russia and then Ukraine because of what's happening right now. It's like, wow, this came out back in what, the year 2016? Wow, alright, cool. But he wants one of them, and there are only two ways that he can get it. And number one is ask Diamondback for help. However, if he does that, Diamondback will take Harlem from him. Or number two, you buy it. So he's like, alright, how much does one of those things cost? So Shades writes it down, gives it to him, and he's like, oh my goodness, what a price. That much per bullet? Alright, and then he has an idea. He's gonna get the guns from police lockup and give them to the other guy whose name I forgot. And then he will get paid. And then also he will be able to get a loan from Diamondback in order to buy one of those bullets in order to kill Luke Cage. Everything will be solved. So Luke finds Zip, the one who stole the ring, and he walks up, and Zip is all tough, and then his boys run away because it's Luke Cage, and then Luke Cage just picks him up, gives him another story on how black the streets are of Harlem, and then takes the ring. Also, the scarf is now under investigation. So that's not fun for him. I finally learned his name. But he's under investigation because he's working for Cottonmouth. So Cottonmouth tells him to get the guns, and he does eventually get the guns. However, when Cottonmouth asks, do you have the guns? He doesn't respond. So there's more to that, maybe in the next episode. And also in this episode, we have Pops' funeral. At which point, in the beginning, up first we have Cottonmouth, who gives a speech about himself, basically wanting to protect Harlem or whatever he says. And he also kind of is like, you know, we need defense against these powered people or whatever he says. And then afterwards, Luke Cage comes up there and he makes it all about Pops and how he cared about the people and how basically he sticks it to Cottonmouth, which is great. I love that speech. And now basically a war is going to begin, and Misty once again wants him to just leave Harlem alone, because he will not make Harlem a better place, and in his war, people are going to get hurt. However, what she doesn't realize is that Luke Cage is main character, and he's the only one who can stop Cottonmouth and the mysterious Diamondback lurking in the background. So episode 6 starts off with Trish Talks. Yes, the Trish Talk from the Jessica Jones show, with the actress actually providing the voice for it. So that's pretty cool. And she talks about Luke Cage and how he saved Harlem. Meanwhile, Scarf wants more money for the guns. And that is what we left on at the last episode, when he was hesitant on to tell. I thought maybe he was gonna turn good. Nah, he just wants more money. So Cottonmouth shoots him. He doesn't die, though. That's what the whole episode is about, a manhunt for Scarf. Meanwhile, Luke is on a run, and he, conveniently, runs past Mariah's house, and he tells her that he'll shut both her cousin down and both of them down. And Mariah isn't happy at all with how everything has been turning out. And even she is like, sell the club, come on, dude. So Luke goes to a diner to eat, and I noticed that the diner looked a wee bit familiar, and I was later on right about the fact that, yes, this indeed is the one that belongs to Claire's mom. So we have the reunion of Luke Cage and Claire. How nice. And initially he is very like, no, not doing this. Okay, bye. But then eventually he decides to become a bit more of a hero, I guess. Not until the end of the episode where he fully commits to it. But they go back to Luke's place, which is the barbershop, and there we have a bleeding Scarf on the floor. And he asks Luke for help, and then when Luke interrogates him, he eventually learns that yes, Scarf is a corrupt cop, and also yes, Scarf killed Chico. So Luke wants to leave him for dead. However, Scarf has everything needed to take down Cottonmouth. So Luke is like, where do you have all this information? He's like, at my house, which is where Misty Knight was before, because she's also searching for Scarf, and she has a new partner who is the other corrupt prick. But they went into the house and they found nothing, so they left and were staking out the place outside. Meanwhile, Luke Cage goes in secretly. Somehow he just blends in. He goes upstairs and immediately notices that the floorboard is creaky. So he opens it up, finds the book, then jumps out the window because Misty Knight notices that someone is over there. And then he runs back to the barbershop and they need an escape. However, Claire already prepared for that and asked her mom to bring over a van. And she does, so now they need to bring that around. Luke grabs Scarf, they get him into the van, and now we need to bring him to the cops with the evidence. It's the best thing to do. So he drives over. However, when Misty Knight and the corrupt cop arrive at the barbershop, they learn that the people saw a green van leaving with the first two letters or numbers being a haha 69. And he tells that, the corrupt one tells that to Cottonmouth, who now has a manhunt out for that van as well. And of course, Cottonmouth's men find him first, and there's a chase that happens until Luke eventually parks the van, and then he smashes a hole through the van side and the wall in order for an escape to happen, and the bad guys light up the van after that. Meanwhile, Misty gets notification about the fact that there's a shooting happening because of the cops, and then she wants to go, and her new partner, is like, let's not. So she's like, oh my god, I'm getting a phone call. Let me pick this up. Ah, yes. Oh, is that so, huh? Yes, okay, yes, this indeed sounds very interesting. Alright, this was Scarf, and he told me not to trust you. And it's like, oh, that lying, corrupt man, he is more in the pocket. He's more in the pocket of Cottonmouth than I am. It's like, why would you say that? It's like, oh, he did. And then she's like, oh, that was easy. And he's like, oh, you didn't actually talk to him. And he didn't say that. Oh, you didn't know. Oops. So they have a little bit of a fight in the car, but eventually Misty Knight wins and then basically has him cuff himself. And then she goes towards the bullet fire. Meanwhile, some of the bad guys went into the van and then threw the hole into the building. And one guy was left, apparently. I don't know what happened to him. I actually can't remember if he actually ever really oh, no, he shows up later on again. We'll get there eventually. But the other 3 guys follow them and they start opening fire. Luke blocks the bullets and then goes over there and beats them up. I want to know what that one thing was about, because there's one guy who shoots a projectile at Cage, which makes me think of Nicolas Cage. But anyway, it bounces off of him, but there's nothing coming out of it. There's no flashbang, there's no gas, there's no explosion. So what was that? It kind of looked like he was fragging out, but there was no explosion. And also, there was no gas. There was nothing really happened. So I want to know what that was, but I don't know. But he takes them out and eventually runs down and afterwards runs back to Claire. Meanwhile, Claire and Scarf, they make it out. However, an SUV is approaching them and I thought Misty was going to help them. But Luke then comes out and blocks the car with his body, obviously, because that's the thing he can do. And Misty then arrives and then afterwards, Scarf dies, R.I.P. the boy, but it's not as sad because he was corrupt after all. And the only reason he kind of gave up is because of the fact that he was at the end of his rope. But I'm not gonna call him a good guy. And then the book, the evidence, gets put into police custody and a lot of people get arrested. Well, Cottonmouth mainly gets arrested. And then after that, Claire says that she's gonna help Luke Cage, like with the hero thing. Because of the fact that Luke wants to be, it's basically like, alright, Cottonmouth is done, I'm done. Perfectly fine, right? But look, I'm sorry. First of all, this is episode 6 out of 13. And second of all, you may not fully be done with Cottonmouth yet, because it seems like the higher-ups at the cops' place, they don't like all the attention. The corrupt police, the councilwoman thing, they don't like any of that stuff. So maybe there's more to this than meets the eye. So Cottonmouth gets let go because of the fact that the evidence that we have is from a corrupt cop and he's dead. So yeah, that's not gonna be working all that well. And this makes Luke Cage, and technically Misty Knight as well, but Luke Cage very upset and really not trust the justice system. Because they talked about it before, Misty and Luke Cage, where it's like, you gotta trust the system. Well, here you go. We trusted the system. Look what happened. Also, Cottonmouth wants the bullet. However, he can't get it because of the fact that everything is a bit too hot right now. And also, everything is a mess thanks to Luke Cage. So, Cottonmouth gives in and is like, call Diamond back. Afterwards, he calls Luke Cage in order to talk. And Mariah gets a visitor from someone named Boone, I think his name was. And he wants basically her spot, and she's like, no. But she should have said yes, let's be honest here, but she said no. Meanwhile, back in the day, we learned a little bit more about Cottonmouth and the fact that he had a prospering future as a pianist. However, Mama Mabel wanted him to become the gangster that he is today. He could have gone somewhere. Uncle Pete was the only one who saw the stuff in him. However, Uncle Pete is a piece of crap too, so yeah. This whole family's rotten. But technically, he wanted Cottonmouth to get out of the crime family and make something of himself. And then the boys come in. However, one of them has to stay because of the fact that he has been selling drugs. And that is what the Stokes don't do. They don't sell drugs, alright? We sell guns and we have the crime stuff, but we don't do drugs. So she cuts the kid's finger off and then has Cottonmouth and Pete beat him up in the basement. Which kind of traumatized Cottonmouth, but I guess this is the life that you got. So Luke Cage arrives for that talk, and Cottonmouth basically is like, look, Mr. Lucas, yeah, I know about your past. If you talk, I'll tell everyone. Alright, I'm gonna turn you in. Alright, so you work for me now. And Cage at this point then decides to run, but Claire convinces him not to run. And Shades isn't happy that Cottonmouth said that to Luke because of the fact that Diamondback, for some reason, has plans for Luke. Because, what we will find out later on, is the fact that they know each other. So after the talk with Luke Cage now searches for Domingo in order to, I guess, put a stop to him. I don't know. And also, Misty looks into Luke Cage. And there's no backstory to Luke Cage at all. He has no internet history. He's got nothing up until a couple of years ago in that sense, which was when he became Luke Cage and Carl Lucas died. Also, I find it weird that Cottonmouth now says that to Luke Cage. Why didn't he blackmail him before? I found that a bit weird. I forgot to say that. I will say that, but why? Why did he wait so long? Meanwhile, back in the day, Cottonmouth snitches to Mama Mabel about Uncle Pete, and she isn't really happy about that. So she gets Uncle Pete, and she wants him to explain himself. And he does, and overall what he's saying isn't necessarily the worst thing. However, the one thing he did is absolutely the worst thing and absolutely despicable. But then Mama Mabel wants Cottonmouth to kill Uncle Pete, which he does. Also, his cousin Mariah comes out and she's like, yeah, you deserve this. You are a horrible person. She says different things, but obviously that way. So Cottonmouth kills Uncle Pete. Bye-bye, Uncle Pete. Meanwhile, in present day, we have Luke Cage who goes over to Domingo and basically ruins his stuff because he's searching for guns. And then Domingo's like, yeah, they're downstairs. Don't worry about it. You can grab them yourselves. Don't you worry about that one. However, Mariah, at this point, also gets fired from the council because of the fact that she is also too hot right now with all the investigations and all that stuff. So she goes over to Cottonmouth. She isn't really happy about that stuff. And they talk about Uncle Pete. Cottonmouth sees him as a hero because he saw in Cottonmouth someone who wouldn't be part of the life of crime, but instead saw a musician. And then Mariah says like, but do you remember what he did to me? And then he's like, well, you walked around half naked. You wanted it. You wanted what he did to you. And if you don't really understand, it was something forcible. And then she's like, no, I didn't want it. Pushes him out and then kills him. No, Cottonmouth, you were the best thing in this season. But she kills him. And then Shade comes in. And I thought actually Shade was why she killed him, because Shade appeared at her house earlier on. But no, it's because he pushes her basically, and that I didn't want it, that kind of stuff. But now Shade's like, oh, this is what a damn shame. It's very sad that Luke Cage killed your cousin now, isn't it? What a shame that Luke Cage did all of this. Meanwhile, Misty tries to get some information out of Luke Cage about himself, but he's not giving it up. And also he's saying, I only want to help. Well, technically he wants to be left alone, but that's not really gonna happen. This show is about you, my friend. Afterwards, he tells Claire his whole past, everything about it. And then Claire's like, don't you worry about it. I got a lawyer friend. And you know I love that reference because I very much love Daredevil. However, then someone is aiming a gun at Luke Cage and shoots. And we learn that is Diamondback. Well, we don't know yet that is Diamondback. But Diamondback, now he's like, hey, Carl. And then shoots him. And it turns out it is that alien drill bullet. And that is how we end the episode. So, Luke is dying in episode 8, and Diamondback follows and attacks the ambulance. And afterwards, he's like, can you dig it? At which point, Luke kind of starts to figure out who it is, but doesn't really know who it is yet. But he is part of the street gang that Luke used to run with. At least that's true. The Warriors, I think it was called. Meanwhile, back at the club, Shades and Mariah frame Luke. They even have a witness called Candace in order to make a false statement. But they frame Luke in the almost perfect way outside of the fact that, he's kind of dying. And also, if Misty Knight really uses her brain, she knows that she saw him earlier, but whatever. So, Claire takes Luke to a women's hospital, I think it was. I forgot what the building was, but it was something with women. Women's hospital or something. So she takes him there in order to try to get the bullet out. And yeah, she can't really get in because the soft tissue under his skin is also super hard. So there's no going in there. And then she uses one of those things that they use in order to see the baby in a pregnant woman. And she sees that the bullet exploded and that there's a bunch of shrapnel stuck inside of him. So Misty calls Luke. Claire answers, and then it's like they're tracking him. However, Luke figures it out, so he's like, cut the line. So she hangs up, but Misty Knight does figure out where Luke is and goes over to him. While Claire is also trying to figure out a way to get inside of Luke because, you know, we need to remove that scrapple. And Shades takes over the club. And also, Misty knows that Luke didn't do it because beforehand she was pressing Candace about it. However, the cops do sadly enough find the evidence that was planted there in the barbershop, so that is not really a good look. But Misty eventually comes and sees Luke in a bad state, and then she gets a call about the evidence, and she's like, I gotta take you in. And it's like, look, the dude has been shot, and he was in the toppled over ambulance. Come on. Also, the dude's dying. However, before anything else can happen, Diamondback attacks again. However, this time Luke gets a good look at who he is. And it turns out it is his dear old friend, Willis Stryker. My only question to Diamondback is he a fan of Wolverines? But they have a little bit of a fight. However, basically Luke Cage is actually crippled because of the fact that he has that bullet inside of him, or the shrapnel inside of him, kind of, because it's funny because later on in the theater, Diamondback attacks him, and when he attacks anywhere except for the bullet wound, like Luke Cage just like bounces off of him, but when he hits the wound, it's like, ah, it hurts. However, Diamondback takes Misty hostage and then is ready to kill her until Luke yells out to Misty, and then he runs away, but he terrifies Misty. And Stryker goes into the theater, and Luke goes in there as well. And Luke is like, I'm sorry that I left you. Alright, I'm sorry. However, then Stryker reveals that he framed Luke for everything except for Reva's death, because that was done by Jessica Jones. But outside of that, however, I would like to make a quick statement about good old Willie himself, because this is on the Marvel Cinematic Universe wiki. According to Luke Cage creator and showrunner, Diamondback's planned arc for the series had been altered when the writers of Jessica Jones Season 1 departed from comic canon by having Kilgrave kill Reva Connors. Given the reception Diamondback received from fans, Cooker, I don't know, admitted that if he could change one thing regarding the series, he would have retooled Diamondback's character, stating that he did not feel they got the tone of the character right until episode 11. So initially they were gonna go more to the comic book route where Reva was a central piece. However, with the fact that the woman is kinda dead, that's kinda difficult to do. Thought I'd make a mention of that. But Stryker did frame Luke, apparently, so we'll get more into that later. However, he sent him to hell and Luke came back with superpowers. Ain't that a B? Can't say the word. Meanwhile, back at the station, Claire isn't really talking. So Misty goes in, and Claire still isn't talking. And then Misty tries to be all tough cop, but that's not gonna work on Claire. And I forgot why I was such a fan of Claire until this scene. Because my goodness, what a backbone she has. She's like, either you are too stupid, or you're just scared. Like, there's, like, you have to see that Luke is innocent. She just pushes back against it and walks out. It's like, Luke Cage is innocent. That is my statement. Write it down. And walks off. What a cool woman. There you go. I figured out something out. I wanted to say something else, but I don't think the 3 letters are not allowed to be said. The ASS are not allowed to be said on YouTube. A bad booty, I guess. But eventually, Diamondback gets away from Luke, so Luke walks off, very hurt. The fact that nobody's helping him is kind of weird, but he's walking with the wound inside of him, and it's just like, I'm so much pain. But then Diamondback shows up again, and then Luke is like, I loved you like a brother. It's like, I am your brother, and shoots him again with another one of those drilling bullets, and he falls into a garbage truck. Alright, a little bit of a different thing going forward with this spoiler talk. It's a new day, and I am sick. A little bit sickish. I can still make these videos, but if I sound a little bit different, I apologize. I have, sadly enough, caught the cold. But that's not gonna stop me from talking about episode 9 of Luke Cage. So, for this episode, we have a couple different storylines, so we can kind of handle them separately because they are presented in the episode as separately. So let's talk about the first one, which is the easy one to talk about. We have Misty Knight, who has an awkward conversation with a psychologist because of what happened with Claire and the fact that she lost her gun and basically almost died. And we basically learned the fact that she hates losing control. She has to have her control in everything, and she has a photographic memory, so that's fun too. But eventually they kind of get to the root of the problem and calm her down so that she can have her badge and her gun back in order to search for Luke Cage. Meanwhile, Stryker isn't really happy about the fact that Cottonmouth is dead, because to Diamondback, Cottonmouth was more than just a brother or a friend. He was very important to him. And we also learned that Cottonmouth's dad overdosed and his mom left him because she wasn't ready to be a mom. And Mariah also wants out of the business, of the crime business. So she goes to Domingo and basically asks him to bring all the crime families together for a talk. And then when that happens, she's like, I want out, and I will sell you the assets that my cousin had for a price. And that Diamondback ruins everything by killing most of the people there, except for Domingo, Shades, and Mariah. But Mariah still wants out. However, Diamondback isn't letting her out. So let's get back to Luke Cage, shall we? Because he is out of the garbage truck, and he went to the, I don't know what you call that place, because I don't really know if in the Netherlands we have those places, or at least I haven't really seen any of those places really ever, not in my memory anyway. But it's basically where you can do the laundry, put your money in the machine, and then it's washing machine and it spins, that kind of stuff. I've only seen those places in video games and in movies and TV series. Laundromat, maybe. We're gonna go with that one. But anyway, he goes in there, he steals someone's clothes, and learns that he is officially the main target for the death of Cottonmouth. But he gets new clothes, and then he walks off, and then he gets stopped by the cops, and then he fights back against the cops, which, let's be honest here, Luke, that is not at all a good idea to do. I mean, he slaps the white cop, and then grabs him to shield him from the oncoming fire of the other cop, who obviously then has a trigger finger, the black cop. And Luke grabs him and throws him off to his car. And while this is happening, Claire is searching for a cure for Luke, a way to penetrate his skin and remove the shrapnel. And all she got out of it was going to Burstein, who was the one who did the experiments originally. And Luke is like, I'm not ready for that. And my initial response was like, look, man, if you're not ready for that, you're gonna die. So have fun doing that. So either you go or you're dead. But Luke eventually goes. And we learn of the fact that he was already selected for the experiment that gave him his powers before Reva ever begged Burstein to put Luke Cage in the program. He was already part of the program because of the fighting ring that he did. So, eventually they kind of figure out, because of the fact that they have Reva's data, which is the data that the dude needs, they have figured out almost everything in order to get this going, except for the fact that what they're missing is the temperature, because that one corrupt guard, he's the one who messed with the dial, and that temperature was what made the experiment work. So we have an idea. We're gonna drop him in boiling acid, and then after that his skin will become soft, and we have a short window to remove all the shrapnel, and if it works, he'll be able to go back to his regular life. So let's dump him in boiling acid. However, the problem is he kind of dies, and that's how the episode ends. So happy endings. You know how a toaster and a bathtub usually is not a good idea? Well, in this case, we need to bring Luke back to life, so let's do it, baby. Yes, and the episode starts off with specifically that, and then Claire figures out that it is the heat that is the main problem, because that one guy who was the racist, corrupt guard, he turned up the heat to maximum level in order for it to work. So they do that. They turn it up to max level, and it works. Claire then removes the shrapnel from his side, which kind of makes me go, didn't he also have shrapnel in his arm though? Like, in his shoulder. He got shot there as well before he fell into the garbage truck. Did that not count? But they get all the shrapnel out, and then Luke makes an amnesia joke by being like, who are you? Meanwhile, back in the Harlem City, we have Stryker, who frames Luke Cage by killing a cop with power gloves. And he does all of that so he can sell guns, and that's why he wants Mariah, because Mariah will be able to work up the crowd so that the guns can be sold to the cops so that, you know, he can make a lot of money. But because of what he did, the cops now start a manhunt for anyone who has potential information about Luke Cage. So they literally start, you know, that whole police violence thing? Yeah, they kind of start doing that now. And I like how they handle it here, because it's literally just for the search of Luke Cage. And I also like what they do in the interrogation room, because eventually they find a kid. The kid from way earlier in the season. The one who was protected by Luke Cage when Henchman shot Pop. R.I.P. the boy. But they get him into the interrogation room, and then a black cop beats him up in order to get answers out of him. And that is what basically starts the actual kind of war between the people and the cops. And I like how it is a black cop, because you can all be problematic. You You know? I like that. It would have been too easy to make it a white cop who beats up the black kid, and it's too easy. So I like that they did it like that. Meanwhile, back at the barn, Luke is a bit skeptical about the doctor. However, the files are open, so Luke can learn the truth. And it turns out that Reva was in on it since the beginning. So she wasn't a saint like he thought she was. And then he basically has a mental breakdown after the dude wants to restart the experiments that created Luke Cage. He basically destroys the whole barn and also destroys the laptop. However, later on it turns out that the doctor is able to get the files from the computer, the destroyed computer, which I don't know how that works, but hey, because I feel like he would still need the USB plugged in. But he now has the files. What's he gonna do with it? Who's to say? Who knows? But Luke isn't really happy about this, and it's like everything is tainted now when he thinks about Reva. And my thought process, the immediate thought process was, fantastic! Now you can be with Jessica Jones, just like in the comics, don't you worry. Turns out, Jessica killing Reva wasn't such a bad thing after all. Now you two can get together. Fantastic, right? Now, okay. That was actually my first thought, because they are together in the comics and actually have kids. I think they have one, maybe more? I don't know. I don't read comics. It's just basically what I looked up way back in the day, and then still remember to this day. They did hook up, but I don't know if they have kids. Meanwhile, back in Harlem, Misty learns the truth about Luke and Willis, because she starts to investigate Willis, which her superior is not very happy about, but she still does that. And thanks to the help of the other guy, whose name I don't know, the nerd guy, let's call him the nerd guy, she's able to figure out that Willis, and more importantly, that Carl Lucas is Luke Cage, aka he was put in prison. So Misty goes over to Domingo in order to ask about Willis, and he tells her to go to Harlem's Paradise. And Luke decides to go back to where it all began, as in his conception technically, and he goes to the church in order to find some answers. The town in which he was created, by the way, that's what I meant. But he goes back to the town from where he is from, and he goes to the church, and there he has a flashback. But because of how young he was, it probably just got repressed, just like a lot of other things from the past. And it turns out his dad was a cheater. And also the fact that his mom couldn't conceive. They tried for a long time to have a kid. It didn't work. So I guess the dad had a child with another woman, the secretary. However, eventually, Luke's mom did get pregnant, obviously, with him, and he was known as the Miracle Baby, and he learns officially the truth. I found this very convenient, but I'll accept it. But it is very convenient, and I want to make a point that it is very convenient that this happened. However, afterwards, Luke is like, let's go back to Harlem and stop it, because initially, once again, he has doubts about going back, but he eventually goes back. So they go back to Harlem, and then outside, there's this guy who sells the footage of the incident all in 4K, and he tells Luke, like, don't go, are you gonna go in there? Because it wouldn't be such a good idea, because you are basically the world's most wanted. And Luke goes inside of Harlem's Paradise and sees Misty going up to Willis, because she saw Willis. She goes upstairs, he follows her upstairs. Luke sees Misty go upstairs, and then he follows her. And when Misty gets shot by Willis, Luke protects her with his body and then tries to escape, but it doesn't really work. And I guess the escape is more planned for the next episode. So in episode 11, Claire gets caught by Willis, and he now has a bunch of hostages. And this is basically the rest of the episode, is a hostage situation. And Luke brings Misty to the kitchen, and they find a trap door, and they hide down there for a little bit. But that's the episode, basically. We got hiding out and a hostage situation, and Willis basically blaming Luke Cage for everything, through the help of Boone. That's fun. However, not only is Claire one of the hostages, but also the snitch. But the fake snitch. The one who faked snitched. Candace is also a hostage. And she tells Claire everything when Claire helps her. And then it says, faint. So Candace faints, like, oh no, my best friend in the whole wide world has fainted, and I need to give her a thing, because she's diabetic. I need to go and grab it, okay? Don't you worry about it. It's downstairs. I'll go get it. And then she knocks the guard out and gets over to Luke Cage, grabs a metal thing, which I don't know what that is, and starts banging the wall. Meanwhile, the cops think that Luke Cage is the one behind the hostage situation. And also, Willis basically tells his whole backstory to Boone for some unknown reason. I guess he just wanted someone to talk to. Don't we all sometimes? And basically, the backstory is the fact that Carl and Willis were best friends. However, they stole a car, and then because of the fact that Carl was the miracle child, he was protected by the preacher. But Willis was put in prison, or in juvie. And in juvie, someone attacked him, and he killed the guy who attacked him. And then his mom died alone, because dad didn't care much. And that's it. But with the banging on the wall, Claire eventually gets the attention of Luke Cage. He bursts through the wall, gets her through in order to help Misty, who is basically bleeding out. But she gets Misty stabilized. Now, I will say a little thing here. This is potentially disappointing for people who are fans of the comic books. But they keep talking in this episode about the fact that Misty is gonna lose the arm. Yeah, she does that in the comics. She has like a metal arm, kind of like Winter Soldier. Yeah, she doesn't lose the arm in this episode though, and not even in this whole season. She doesn't lose the arm. But the fact that they keep talking about it's like they're teasing the fans. Also, Luke Cage tells Misty the truth about Carl Lucas, about who he was beforehand, and how he was basically framed by Willis and put in Seagate. And also that Willis is his half-brother, so that's fun. She can do with that information whatever she pleases. However, Willis at one point lets a couple of hostages go. And that is kind of a stupid thing to do, if I'm being honest here, because why would they support you? So, obviously, the hostages all say, yeah, Luke Cage was running away from the bullets. The bullets were flying towards him. So, there's a bit of doubt that is starting to spread with the cops, kind of some cops. Also, Blake Tower joins us today. I thought you were taking a bit of a vacation. Wasn't expecting you to go to Harlem after, you know, Reyes got killed by quote-unquote Punisher, but truly Blacksmith. Which we also get a reference to from Blake with the fact that Mariah basically right now uses this situation in order to sell those Judas bullets to the cops, and the mayor's kind of budging. However, Blake thinks it's a bad idea because what if people like Frank Castle get their hands on it? I mean, he was able to shoot up so much stuff with just regular bullets. Imagine if he had the Judas bullets. It's not good, but they gotta use them. So the cops are ready to go inside. And Willis is like, look, hey, look, if you don't come out, I will start killing hostages. So Luke goes over and he starts smacking people around on his way over. However, Willis does kill Boone with his super punch thingy. Meanwhile, Shade also learns about the trapdoor, so he opens it up, goes downstairs, and gets into a fight with Misty and Claire, which he loses. However, one scene looked a bit weird because Claire uses a wrench and hits Shade. It looked like she hits him in the side, but he like bounces it off like it's nothing. Which I find very strange, because no matter how strong someone is, getting hit by a wrench hurts. No matter how you look at it. I don't care if like a child was swinging that thing, okay? That hurts. But then he pushes it off, but because of the teamwork that Claire and Misty have, they take down Shades, and everything is good. Meanwhile, Luke rescues the hostages by slapping Sugar on the back of the head, knocking him out, and lets more hostages escape, which obviously is gonna mean that they are gonna hopefully... if I was a hostage, and I came out, I would immediately yell, Luke Cage is innocent! Luke Cage saved us! That kind of stuff, you know? Nobody starts doing that. But the cops go in. However, Willis has one more hostage, and it's Candace. So Luke now has a choice. He can either save Candace and get caught, or escape. So Luke chooses the only option in front of him. He rescues Candace and gets arrested. Meanwhile, Willis escapes through a secret door. And that's it. Luke Cage is now caught, and Misty is on a stretcher, and she's like, Captain, he's innocent. Alright, he's innocent. Luke Cage didn't do all the things. However, then the captain kind of reads off the things that he did, like killed that guy, and also attacked the cops and did this. And it's like, she's like, he's innocent of all of it. And I was like, not entirely. He still attacked those cops. I mean, he's innocent of the other stuff, but he still attacked the cops last time I checked. Look, you can say whatever you want. He didn't kill Cottonmouth. He didn't kill that one cop in the park. He didn't kill Boone. But he did actually attack. He did fight back against those cops. So, sorry, dude, but he did. But let's see how the interrogation of Luke Cage goes in the penultimate episode of Luke Cage Season 1. So, now that Luke Cage has been caught, finally, after so long, this criminal is finally in the custody. Misty tells him basically exactly how to escape. And he does. He escapes the cops. One guy escapes the cops. Well, technically he doesn't, but there's a cop there who lets him go because he believes in Luke Cage, so that's nice. And Willis goes into hiding, and he learns that some of the files are gone. I don't know which files, but I think it's the files that we come to later on. And I also like how Turk calls Zip basically the equivalent of a female dog. And Domingo wants to take out Diamondback. So while Luke is on the run trying to hide with bullet holes in his hoodie. So yeah, those cops are blind. Let's say that, okay? I don't think blind people are allowed to drive, but somehow they are. However, there's a robbery that takes place. So Luke goes in there to stop it, and then there is Method Man, which I don't know. I think he's a rapper of some kind. I don't know. I'm not part of that section, okay? I don't know who rappers are, who Method Man is, but he is apparently important and made a song that he plays in this episode about Luke. So that's cool. But then he exchanges hoodies with Method Man, who then goes on a podcast in order to basically say that Luke saved his life and the fact that Luke is good. And after that, immediately everyone has bullet-holed hoodies and walks around the streets with them in support of Luke Cage. And I do like that, but that happened really quickly. It's like the same day. So what? They heard Method Man on the podcast and immediately just grabbed hoodies and started poking holes in it or something like that? Like what? Did they all have a gun and started shooting through the hoodies? Like, don't think about it too much. This is basically the people standing with Luke, so it's always beautiful to see. And in custody, Shades is getting questioned, and well, the only word he knows is lawyer. And then he comes up with this funny story and ends with lawyer. So I like that. But he gets free because of the fact that someone paid his bond, and that was set at 2 mil. So I don't know why Diamondback spent 2 mil just to kill Shades, but sure, why not? Also, this is the problem with posting bail, because the whole bail system is kind of wrong. Because if you're rich enough, you never have to serve a day in prison, because the fact that you could just bail out. Meanwhile, Candace calls Misty and comes clean about the whole thing, about the fact that she came in after Cottonmouth was dead, and she saw that Mariah and Shades were doing the cleanup, and basically that Mariah killed Cottonmouth. So Zip picks up Shades, takes him over to Diamondback. However, turns out that is absolutely not what is happening, and Diamondback instead wanted Zip to kill Shades. So Shades turns the tables. He's getting choked out, but he grabs someone's gun, shoots everyone, then learns the truth, and then shoots Zip. And I was like, finally, he's dead. Oh my god. Oh, what an annoying prick he was. I did not like him. Also, Diamondback arrives at Mariah's place and gives her money and basically tells her that he is in control and also that Shades is dead, until later on when it turns out that it is not the case. So eventually Luke Cage makes it back to the barber shop where he meets Bobby. And Bobby's plan is to talk to Turk. So he lures Turk somewhere. Luke goes over there and then he picks him up because he wants to know where Diamondback is, stuffs him in a dumpster, crushes the dumpster until he gets the answer, and then walks away. There's baby diapers in here. So Luke Cage goes over there. However, Domingo already went over there in order to kill Diamondback. However, Diamondback was able to fight back and win because he has some kind of new thing. They're not really clear. Domingo is not really clear on what it was, but he had some kind of a weapon or something like that. However, Luke Cage goes in there and rescues Domingo from an explosion, and then he learns about the super powerful weapon thing. Meanwhile, Shades arrives at Mariah's plate and is like, the enemy of my enemy is technically still my enemy, but let's call them friend nowadays. We should go over to Luke and ask him for help. And it's like, why would Luke ever want to work with us? So Shades is like, well, I got the ticket to his freedom right here. And my guess is those were the files that were missing earlier on. So as Shades and Mariah are outside waiting, they talk a little bit. And Mariah's like, why were you at the club to begin with when I killed Cottonmouth? And he was like, well, I was there to kill him too, but you beat me to it. So eventually they go inside. They want to know where Luke is. Luke comes out and is ready to just slap them on the head. However, they offered the deal, and then a grenade happens, and then Diamondback has a new suit. He's ready for the final battle against Luke Cage in the next episode and the finale of the first season. So the final episode starts off with a flashback to Luke, or Carl as he was known back then, training for a boxing match with Stryker. And that's it. That's basically and then throughout the fight, we get flashbacks to that fight. It doesn't necessarily add anything to the episode, and to be honest, I don't really know why they included it, but they did. But anyway, throughout the first part of this episode is all about fighting, and it is a slow fight. Look, if you're expecting the high-end, like, quality fights that you got in Daredevil, you're not getting that. You get people picking each other up and throwing them against walls and just punching them once. That's what you get. You don't get the ninja moves and that kind of stuff. You just get, like, a big guy fighting another big guy. And overall, I actually kind of enjoyed the fight. However, Diamondback has one fatal flaw, literally, on his back. and Luke never really takes advantage of it. Also, as the fight began, Shades picks up Misty's phone, which he will use later on, which I find very convenient, but also I don't like it. And as the fight progresses, eventually Luke is just like, dude, I'm done. Alright, I'm done. I'm not fighting you anymore. And then Diamondback starts to punch him and punch him and punch him and punch him. However, apparently, the way that it is explained later on, that suit works like Ultra Ego from Dragon Ball Super manga, where the more damage you take, the stronger you get. So the more damage the suit absorbs, the more damage it can deal out. So if Luke doesn't fight, the suit ain't doing no damage. But the people there start rooting for Luke. And I like that a lot, as you know. As you should know. Very much a fan of when the hero gets cheered on by a crowd. And eventually Luke wins the fight. There's not much more to the fight. Outside of the fact that Mariah, during this fight, is also telling the news people, oh, hey, by the way, Luke Cage is actually Carl Lucas. Bye. And yeah, that doesn't really make people happy now, does it? Well, on the somewhere else, because they're now all calling in order to get Carl Lucas arrested, which we learn about later on, but that's basically what leads to that stuff. But Luke eventually beats Diamondback, and now the day is saved. So he goes to the cop. He lets himself be arrested in that sense, and then explains his side of the story. He tells the full truth. I was somewhere else, getting myself healed from the bullet that was shot in me, while your officer was punched to death. Alright? That's what happened. I'm not a cop killer. I'm not even a killer. I haven't killed nobody. I just slap people. That's all I do. And in the interrogation room, Mariah blames Stryker now instead of Luke Cage for the death of Cottonmouth, which is actually ironic because Diamondback was the only one who actually did not want Cottonmouth dead. However, they start pushing back against her. Misty has this whole plan figured out until, boom, Shades kills Candace and everything falls apart. So Mariah gets let go, and then Carl gets arrested and gets put back in Seagate. However, he's like, I'm innocent, and I was just like, you're not though. I mean, you are. Of the original crime, you are 100% innocent. The problem is, you escaped from prison. That's a crime in and of itself. So technically, you're still supposed to serve time for breaking out of prison. If I'm being honest there, you kind of need to go back for like a month, maybe a week. For like escaping prison, okay? That is not something that is allowed. So even though you are technically 100% innocent of the original crime, you're not really innocent of the crime of escaping the prison. And basically being on the run for, I don't know how long it's actually been. Let's say a year. Let's say over a year, maybe 2. Let's say 2 years, okay? 2 years you've been on the run. And as Bobby is looking in at the barbershop, because I was also like, why is nobody thinking about going back to the barbershop and picking up the file? Because Mariah doesn't have it, potentially. You guys don't have it. It's worth checking out, at least for Claire, to go back to the barbershop in order to find the file. But Bobby finds the file. So that will probably come into play during the Defenders, because Luke Cage has got nothing left until we get to Defenders, which is only 2 more reviews away. The next one is Iron Fist Season 1, God help me, and the other one is The Defenders, and I'm very excited about that one. Also, from now on, Misty is gonna start staking out Mariah in order to find dirt on her, and Claire is going to take lessons with Colleen Wing, and that immediately made me happy. Look, Iron Fist Season 1 may not be good at all. I'm sorry, it's not. Alright, I don't hate it as much as most people, but I'm not gonna sit here and say that that is like masterpiece content. However, I am excited to see Colleen again. I liked her actress, and I liked her in the show. Alright, she's the best part of Iron Fist, no doubt about it. So I'm excited to see her again, but that made me happy. So that will also lead into the Iron Fist Season 1, which we will deal with next, which takes place, I don't know, a couple of months after this one. I think that takes place in January of 2016. We are right now in like November time of 2015, maybe December time? November, December time of 2015, but like the Iron Fist Season 1 takes place in January of 2016, so we're closing in on that beautiful Civil War, but we're not there yet. And also, Diamondback gets experimented on, which will lead to nowhere, because the next season, if you go over to the Disney Plus screen for Luke Cage, you immediately see Luke Cage punching Bushmaster, who is the villain of Season 2. And after that, the show's done. It got cancelled after 2 seasons. So, if Diamondback is ever gonna come back, that will be in the MCU under maybe a new name, like Daredevil Born Again. if the MCU actually wants to deliver some quality content. Which, hey, who knows? Maybe Daredevil Born Again can be the renaissance that the Disney Plus era needs, because it needs something good, okay? It hasn't necessarily had a lot of good things. The best thing is Loki, and even that thing I have issues with. But overall, that was my spoiler talk for season 1 of Luke Cage, and I will say this, it was actually better than I thought. I know people like to tear this show down. I hear it online anyway, that people tear this show down. For me, this was actually pretty good. It is better on a rewatch because you know what to look for. Like the hints that they give early on about Diamondback, I missed on my first viewing. So for me, when Cottonmouth got killed and Diamondback stepped in, it felt a bit more abrupt. However, watching it this time and hearing all the Diamondback references, it's like, oh, so it was kind of planned out. I like that. What I don't like, however, is the fact that Cottonmouth died. I will say that he is a lot better than Diamondback. Also, I kind of wish that the show showed some backstory between Luke Cage and Diamondback. Would have been a lot better, because we hear that they are childhood besties, but we never really get to see it. That was the brilliance of, like, Killgrave. We got flashbacks to Killgrave as well. Jessica Jones and Killgrave together. Some flashbacks. We didn't really get that for Luke Cage and Diamondback, which I found a big shame. And that is probably the biggest sin that this season commits. The fact that it does not expand upon that is the biggest problem that this show has. Also, I will say this is just a little headcanon, but if we never see Diamondback again in the MCU in the future, who knows what happens after this, because anything is possible. But if we never see him again, he died during the experiments. Alright, can we all agree on that one? He died during the experiments. That is that loose plot thread kind of dealt with. But overall, like I said, I really enjoyed this season, and I didn't think it was perfect. It has its problems, but it's a good watch, and I also like how it deals with the political kind of stuff, if you want to call it that, like the cops versus black people. It doesn't just like hammer it in like cops are bad. It kind of takes it on a more general statement, which I like that. I like that it goes more general about it instead of just being like, yeah, cops are bad. It takes more generalized, I'm using words that I don't even know if are correct, but I'm still going to use those words, but because I don't know the words in my head that I need to use here. But it basically goes the neutral route, like a middle ground between the two. And I like that. I also like how it deals with racism while not saying that every white person is a racist that exists, like a lot of shows nowadays do. And you can kind of understand both points of view, even though Luke Cage's point of view is always correct, let's be honest there. But you can kind of understand it. I mean, in the cops' eyes, Luke Cage just punched an officer to death. So obviously, we need to get him, alright? And we're gonna get a bit more violent. There is logic behind it, but like, we know Luke Cage is innocent. So I like how it deals with that, because nowadays, they would have gone the bad route. If this was made nowadays, they would have gone the bad route, basically. And to be honest, the route that the only reason you take it is to fuel Twitter arguments. And they didn't do that in this show, and I really like that. Overall, I thought this show was great. I love Luke Cage. I already loved him when I first saw Jessica Jones. Season 1, he was great in that, and I wanted to see more, and then this show delivers a lot more, and I am very much happy about that. I also like the plot twist that they technically did not have to do with Reva, of like turning her into a, yeah, she's not innocent in all of this. I like that, because that also kind of was set up in Jessica Jones Season 1, with the fact that Reva had this USB with so much info on it, and basically went to great depths in order to hide that thing until Jessica Jones dug it up. I like how even there you kind of get hints like, yeah, there's more to this, and Reva may not be fully innocent in all of this. And then we get the whole Reva is fully innocent in all of this until Luke Cage learns that she isn't fully innocent in all of this, and that she kind of lied to him. However, she is not a horrible person because she still faked Luke Cage's death, or Carl Lucas's death. So at least there's something there. And overall, a great season. So let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below about Luke Cage. I want you to comment all of your problems that you had with it, because there are either problems that I overlooked or I didn't notice. I do have my issue with it. Obviously, if you watch my review, this season did not get a 10 out of 10. But I want to know your thoughts in the comment section down below. But with that being said, thank you all so very much for watching, and I hope you guys have enjoyed. And if you did, please like button, subscribe if you're new, if you're not already. Turn on notifications. Don't forget to check out my Let's Play channel, link in the description and at the end of the video. And like I said before, I will see you guys next time for, oh help me God, Iron Fist Season 1. The worst thing that everyone agrees on, that this is actually the worst thing that Netflix has ever released during the Defender saga. Bye!